Hi everyone, today we're going to show you how to swap a water valve on an EVO system. So here I have an EVO 1 in front of me, and I also have a 5/16 nut driver and a water valve replacement assembly. First thing I'm going to do is remove the door from my system by gently bending in the arms and pulling it off the hinges. I'm going to set this somewhere safe. The next thing you're going to want to make sure to do is ensure that your facility's water is turned off. Since you're going to be opening up the water line, if the water is turned on, you'll have a big old mess on your hands. So I know that my water is turned off. Now what I'm going to do is come down here. I'm going to drop the receptacle by lifting up on this little arm here, and then gently push up to fully free the receptacle. I'm going to pull it off the pivot rod and set it down so I can have access to the plumbing tree over here. Now to remove the water valve assembly, I'm going to loosen this hose clamp up front, right here, right in front of the water valve, and then this hose clamp back here, right behind our check valve. So to start, I'm going to go ahead and loosen this hose clamp. I'm going to get it fairly loose, enough so that I can slide it away from this bar. So maybe like that. Cool, so that one's loose enough. Now I'm going to do the same thing to this hose clamp back here, which will actually be a 1/4 inch nut driver. So I'm going to loosen this back here with a 1/4 inch nut driver. That seems pretty loose. Now that these hose clamps are both loose, I'm going to very gently work the hoses off of the barbs. So I'm actually going to cut this zip tie here just so I have easier access to that hose. So now I'm going to gently work this hose down off the barb. It takes a little bit of effort, but just be careful not to damage anything around it. Sometimes what can help too is loosening these plumbing clamps here, just using a simple Phillips head screwdriver. Same thing, there will be a second hose clamp or plumbing clamp back behind the water valve as well. All right, now that those plumbing clamps are both off, I'm going to just work on getting that tubing off these barbs. It'll take quite a bit of work, but just gently pull and should do the trick. Same thing with this one back here. Also disconnect this connector so that I can pull this whole assembly out. This zip tie will have to go as well. I'm going to pull this hose off as well. All right, now that I've removed my old water valve, I'm going to take my replacement assembly and reinstall it in the same manner that I took it out. So I'll start by putting this hose, clear hose, on the back elbow that's pointing up, the same direction as the water valve's head. And I'll drop that hose clamp down and give it a good tightening while it's outside the machine, since it's pretty difficult to get to once you install it. All right, it's pretty tight. So now I'm going to lay my water valve back into the machine, making sure that I line up the inlets and outlets of the water valve with these two plumbing clamps here. So I'm going to make sure that this square part that's marked in lines up with the square plumbing clamp, and the circular part back by this check valve back here lines up with the other plumbing clamp. Now I'm going to work this hose back onto the water valve assembly. I'll slide that hose clamp back up to this barb, and I'll give that a good tighten. Now that the hose clamps are tightened, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the plumbing clamps, making sure that I keep all my hardware and reinstall them in the same spots that I took them out. Now, if this hose clamp is in the way, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and loosen it a bit, since it's a bit in the way of the plumbing clamp, and I'll move it just so that the screw head's not. And I'll go ahead and retighten that fairly tight. Now I got enough clearance for my plumbing clamp. I'll go ahead and reinstall that. All right, and now my water valve is reinstalled. Now at this point, what I would do is turn my water back on and run a little water through the system and make sure there's no leaks. I would then come back in about an hour, as with the warm water running through the system, sometimes the hoses can expand or relax, and that means that there can be some more slack in the hose clamps. And so I'll come back in an hour and just once again give those another tighten just until they're very, very tight. All right, and with that, we have swapped our water valve assembly.